Scott Martin of Kingsview Asset Management, travel expert Mark Murphy as well to look at that. All right. You know what's interesting about this, Scott, and I've heard it expressed this way, I tried to tease it as such, that some call this relief that it wasn't terror, even though for those people involved it certainly was, no matter who the culprit was, and that the cynical view is we're sadly getting used to this sort of thing, even though something of this magnitude is not the usual thing. What do you think?
You know, unfortunately, Neil, these events are happening more often. They're more prolific. It seems like things are just getting more and more desperate for a lot of these events. And I'll tell you what's happening. The market, like you said, is starting to shrug these things off. I mean, as an $18 trillion economy like we have here in the U.S., it won't back down to anyone, frankly. And even if you look back, I think about the terrible attacks on September 11th. Yes, the market was closed for a number of days. But you know what's funny is the day the market opened on September 17th, if you actually bought stocks that day after they had dropped in reaction to the events, you actually made money into the end of the year because the economy will move forward, things will recover, and consumers will come back again.
Well, you never know. I mean, Mark Murphy, one of the things I see is that people probably are reassessing travel, period, or certainly travel to locales like Vegas. It could be a short-lived type of a fear, and I understand that. But what are you noticing, and what do people do? I mean, you always hear conventions that maybe get reshuffled and scheduled, or people get antsy. What are you seeing?
Well, number one, Vegas is the convention capital of the world.
Right.
So I don't think you're going to see any drop off in that. Companies will certainly look at that. But the fact that up to this point, this is a lone wolf with no ties to any outside organizations that we know of, given that it's a one-off and it could happen anywhere. And that's unfortunately the world we live in today. You can get in a car and something bad can happen. You can get on a plane. You can be in your kitchen and slip and fall. The reality is, for those folks, your heart goes out to them. But what we found with the American traveler is they're very resilient. And I think the demographic that goes to Las Vegas is a very resilient demographic as well. And speaking to some of the folks that send a lot of people to Vegas, right now they're concentrating on basically responding to what's going on, responding to the customers on the ground, and they're not seeing a string of cancellations or anything like that at this point in time. So I think you're going to see Vegas get right back into business as usual, and I think that you're going to find that places that are truly dangerous, people will stay away from them, and that's just smart. But for the most part, it's just a one-off, to be frank.
Yeah, you know, people talk, Scott, and you've reminded me about this during times like these, tragic as they are. We're just reminded here that those in the industry tend to sell off. Stocks of those in the industry sell off before people get surer footing, less nervous. But that's little relief to those in Vegas. But I am wondering whether it longer term, and I'll leave you with this, Scott, it changes people's investment outlook, whether they just start getting nervous or, to your earlier point, sadly, we're kind of getting used to it. This is a worldwide phenomenon.
Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it? I mean, it just seems like these events become more commonplace, and that's why you have to be confident in your long-term asset allocation, because things do come back. But don't forget, too, Neil, to put maybe a slight positive spin on this, for every attack like this, for every terrorist threat we have out there, there are hundreds that get foiled around the world.
Exactly
so
right.
Our intelligence, our efforts are getting better and better with terrible events like these.
Yeah, I should also point out that Condé Nast and some other groups, and this might be something for you, Mark, have been talking about how U.S. metropolitan areas, you know, are ripe for this sort of thing, the copycat sort of stuff. I mean, it's overstating it, I think, but there is a worldwide concern. How do you tell your customers, the people you advise, you bring it down a notch?
Well, in terms of just getting out to different locales, you know, you've seen it all over Europe. You've seen it in Asia. You've seen it in the U.S. The reality if you're here on the ground in the U.S., things happen right here in our backyard. If you go to Chicago, we talk about Chicago. What's happening in Chicago? Things are constantly happening. That's just the nature of the beast. And I go to Chicago. That's my hometown. I don't worry about it. And I think that's how most travelers are viewing any incidents like this, unless there's a pattern. And then it's a whole new ball game.
Yeah, then it could be. Gentlemen, thank you very, very much. Meanwhile.